Hi, Editing Dot here. I didn't really explain this well in the video, but this is a VOD, an edited VOD of a stream that I did, revealing all of the endings I wrote for every single character of the DreamSMP. They're not canon. They're my personal canon, what I think should or what I want to happen. You can watch the VOD here or on my Twitch. There's timestamps in the description below of all the characters in the DreamSMP in case you just want to watch one or two. And yeah, I hope you enjoy.
My heart's beating so much. This is weird. Okay. Okay, so I'm still trying to figure out how I should do this. So I've written... So there's a separate section for every single character. And I'm not quite sure who I want to start with. The chart? I do have the chart. Here, okay, we'll look at the chart first. Give me a second. I haven't really updated it recently. So there's all the characters. I said every single character. I did, like, technically omit a couple, because I wasn't going to write, like, an ending for Mexican Dream. Obviously, I'm human. I haven't seen every single VOD of every single lore video, so I know some of the characters better than others. Oh, I can highlight things. So, some of the ones, like, Michael, for example, he hasn't been on the SMP for a while, so I was just kind of, like, writing it based on, like, the vibes I got from the CC and, like, what has happened. So I'll briefly explain the chart. You've got all the characters, the status. Some of these are muddled. I meant to change some of them. Like, I wouldn't consider George a tertiary character anymore. So the status, their alignment, which is just all my personal opinion. I was just using it to try to, like, rationalize what they would do. What, like, most people think of them. Lives remaining, a couple people, like BadBoyHalo, his lives complicated. Same with Jack, Tommy, and Wilbur, because they're kind of dead. I want all of these to be something that could actually happen. I think some of them are a lot more likely to happen than others. Because some of them are just like me, like... Because we all know, like, the CCs that they... Some of them take lore more seriously than others. So I feel like some of the people's endings aren't going to be, like, serious at all. They're just going to be, like, a little shit post. And that's fine. But yeah. Oh, and I finished all this. Like, I don't know why. I just never updated the chart for all my drafts and revised. Finished. And the endings. Okay. I think we'll start with Wilbur's. So, he sees the battle from afar. He sees the fall, clear as day. Wilbur surprises himself when he sheds a tear. Not grief for what was, but remorse for now what would never be, for what would never now be, for what would now never be. He turns his back towards the burning city and walks into the woods. Wilbur builds himself a small cottage. He sends letters in the backs of parrots to Tommy, Philza, Fundy, and Nikki. Philza is the only one who has ever replied. He doesn't know if the others have ever even read his letters, but none of them have ever asked him to stop. So he keeps writing. I was being dramatic when I said exile. That is the exile. Wilbur voluntarily puts himself into exile. This is Karl's ending. So, okay. The real in-between was strange. Everything was so still. None of the chirps or crickets from before. The silence isn't off-putting, however. It feels quite serene. He walks around. There are no other Karls here. He's all alone. In the entryway, there's another book that explains everything. He knows what has to be done. He wakes up in a field. The flowers smell so beautiful. In the distance, he can see two individuals. The one with the headband is laughing at something the boy with glasses said. Karl stands up to go introduce himself. It's not technically a bad ending. It gets better. It gets better, but I just felt like all the stuff that he does with his memory, he has to, at some point, completely lose his memory. So that's what that is. He gets wiped clean. I need Sapnap. Yeah, okay, I'll read Sapnap next. God, I keep forgetting to breathe. Okay, it's fine. Sapnap. The day of the battle started normally. Sapnap and George were goofing off in the gardens. Karl had asked him to guard the library while he went off to do whatever Karl does. He comes back around midday. Sapnap goes to tell him about a joke George had made moments earlier when Karl begins to speak. He introduces himself. and offers a hand to shake. Sapnap begins to tremble. George walks over, sensing the tension. Sapnap finds himself unable to form words as he looks at the blank slate his fiancée has become. George ushers them both inside. Over time, it becomes a bit easier. They do their best to fill Karl in on everything. His love for George and Sapnap remains. They attend the funeral together. Sapnap grows closer with Nikki. It can be very hard to take care of the ones you love. They are each other's shoulders to cry on. He visits his father occasionally, but the wound from the banquet had never quite healed. He sees dreams sometimes. Sometimes with Karl and George, other times alone. Most of the time he remains in Kanoko Kingdom with his husbands. Some days are worse than others, but they get through it together. I said what I said. I said what I said. Thank you for the follow. Yeah. There was another thing in there that maybe Igagi next. I'm glad that you guys are getting hung up in the funeral because there was something else that I said that I felt like was also going to get quite a reaction. Here's George. George hadn't meant for it to happen. I suppose no one does. But he fell in love. It made sense when he thought about it. His love for them had always been greater than friendship. One cold night after the funeral, he crawled into Karl and Sapnap's bed. He said it was because of a dream. That was a lie. George hadn't had any more dreams since the day of the battle. The day Karl lost his memory. The day Quackity died. The thought invokes guilt. He wasn't supposed to be the third. What would Quackity have thought? Would he have been happy they were happy? Or would he feel betrayed, replaced? It was too much to think about. They got married on a sunny day in spring. It was a small ceremony. Eret officiated and Hannah served as the witness. Their lives together were quaint. Karl would sit and read his books while Sapnap and George played chess. Or they'd all go on a midnight walk in the gardens and then return to bed for the night. George had never had a more peaceful night of sleep than when he was surrounded by his husbands. Okay. Quackity. Quackity's is also pretty short. He awakes to Purpled's cries. They are here. Quackity grabs his gear. He didn't think they would act this quickly. He rushes to the street. The Syndicate is waiting for him. Technoblade is waiting for him. Quackity rushes him. This time he would prove himself. This time he would win. He makes the first move. Techno dodges. They trade swings, but Quackity's passion was no match for Technoblade's technique. Blood drips down his face and into his eyes. He crumbles. He awakes within the Space Needle, but instead of heading down the stairs, he heads to the balconies. He views the country that was his child, demolished and burning. Fundy, Foolish, Purpled, and Slime are doing their best to defend his dream, but they are fighting a losing battle. Quackity looks to the sky. It's lovely outside. The sun has just begun to rise on a new day. He takes a step forward and falls, leaving his wings firmly tucked behind his back. Aren't I so sweet? Oh my god. That was just the ending that I had to write. I'm sorry, because I assume most of you are here from TikTok. It was like my best performing TikTok ever about someone was going to jump from the Space Needle, and I said that it was going to be Quackity, so I needed to include that. He had to be the one to jump. And the wings, too. I was like halfway through writing it, and then I remembered that he had Elytra, and I was like, oh, that makes it so much worse. Yeah, but I love that he has Elytra now, because he could have, at any point, he could have chosen not to. Have you ever, I don't know if you guys ever seen BoJack Horseman? I don't know how big the crossover is between these two fan bases. Anyways, it's lovely and you should all watch it. But there's a poem in it about a character in the show that had committed suicide by jumping off a bridge. And he writes, the poem is about his regret that he feels, like halfway down. Yeah, the view from halfway down. And how once he had stepped off that bridge, how he wishes that he could go back in time and stop it all. He doesn't, once he makes that jump, he doesn't want it anymore. And that makes Quackity so much worse because at any point he can stop himself from the fall. Even after he's jumped, he can open his elytra and not die. But it does. Slime? Yeah, I can read slimes. Oh, I like slimes. Because I tried to write them all like kind of in the voice of the character. And I feel like I really did manage to do that with slime. Fundy shakes him awake. This is odd. The others do not like to touch his morning goop. There are loud bangs coming from outside. Purpled is frantically putting on armor. Quackity hands Slime the diamond sword. They rush out. Slime follows tentatively. The sword feels strange in his hands. He learns quickly not to hold the sharp part. Outside is chaos. He stands completely still. Fighting was quite different up close. The spell was broken when an axe landed deep in Fundy's neck. Slime had never seen death up close either. A sword slices purpled. Another cuts Quackity. All that's left is foolish. The 23-foot titan turns to Slime and orders him to run. He follows the instructions as lightning rains down behind him. He spends some time as part of the sand, but quickly becomes bored. Sand isn't as fun as people. Slowly he begins to creep closer. He sees the ruins of Las Nevadas. He keeps moving. Finally, he finds what he was looking for. A fox and a purple. He rushes to engulf them, but something seems off. They are wearing suits next to a large hole in the ground. It's not a normal hole, though. There seems to be something in it. Slime advances, ignoring the strange stares from other individuals dressed in black. He looks in the hole. Fundy and Purple each place a hand on his shoulder. A strange sensation overcomes Slime. His optical orbs increase in moisture. For the first time in his life, Slime cries. Yeah, okay, so here's Hannah. Ah, there you go. Okay. After the banquet, she runs. As soon as her mind returns, as soon as her body becomes hers again, she flees. The others do nothing to stop her. Perhaps their faith in the egg has dwindled. Her body is weak. She hasn't been in nature for so long, but she pushes herself, escaping to the woods. She collapses at the foot of a tree. Using what strength she has left, she cocoons herself in the roots. When she awakes, she is stronger. The voices that had dominated her body and her mind for the past few months had been erased. The sweet sounds of nature's grew louder, and she followed them to a beautiful meadow. Hannah laid down, and a man in a color-block hoodie approached her. He brought her to the main grounds of Kinoko Kingdom and introduced her to his husbands. She expressed her love of flowers to them, and they offered her residence within the nation in return for her services as a gardener. Hannah gladly accepts. She grows close with the trio. They reintroduce her to Puffy and Nikki. She brings them a bouquet as an apology and as a neighborly gift. It takes some time, but they learn to trust her again. She offers them the meticulously groomed Kinoko Gardens as a venue for their nuptials. Over time, she meets others on the server, some new, some old. Everyone asks for her to tend their gardens. She always accepts. See, that one's not so bad, right? Yeah, Hannah does join Kinoko Kingdom. It's honestly like that's like my favorite trope. It's just like the three gay men just sort of like take her in, you know? Yeah, see, I did write some happy endings. They're not all angst. A lot of the times I put neutral on the chart because it's like semi-bad and semi-good. Like they got some bad stuff and then they get some good stuff, you know? God. Oh yeah, and Ranboo's in the Syndicate too. The morning of the last Nevadas battle, Ranboo wakes up in his home in Snowchester with Tubbo beside him. He lays there for a moment, looking at his sleeping husband. He gets out of bed as softly as possible so as not to wake him, but he drops his crown and it clatters on the floor. Tubbo wakes and questions him. What was he doing up at this hour? Ranboo says it's nothing, and Tubbo goes back to sleep. On his way out of the mansion, he stops by Michael's room and looks in at his son sleeping peacefully. His eyes begin to water and his face burns. He turns away. He meets the syndicate at Phil's house. Phil tells them the plan Techno had put in his will, and the three head towards the prison. Nikki goes in first and slays Sam. Phil swipes the keycards and lets them in. No words are uttered as they advance towards Dream's cell and send over the bridge. Phil hands Techno his things, and they head back the way they came. As they approach the vault doors, Dream stumbles. His muscles were weak from disuse, and he accidentally pushes a button on the wall. Lights flash, sirens scream, and emergency measures are activated. Ranboo blacks out and finds himself on the other side of the vault door seconds later. He keeps running. At the entrance to the prison, they see Sam and prepare for a fight. Sam seems distraught. He drops his sword and runs. The syndicate advances towards Las Nevadas. There's no time to lose. Ranboo takes them through the fortress that his husband had built and towards the city. Ranboo, Nikki, Technoblade, and Phil face off against Purpled, Fundy, Quackity, Slime, and Foolish. Ranboo lunged towards Fundy, praying that Tubbo and Michael were still safe in their beds, and cuts him down. As Nevadians fall, lightning is called from the sky, separating the two factions. Once it clears, Foolish is the only one left. Ranboo looks into his emerald eyes. They had been colleagues, friends even. But he knew where Ranboo's family lived, and now he worked for the other side. Ranboo closes his eyes and readies the axe of Ender when he hears a sound. He opens them to see Quackity lying lifeless on the ground. Techno gives a slight bow of his head and walks away. Ranboo follows. He returns to Snowchester after dark. Tubbo sat waiting for him in the foyer. He had noticed that Ranboo's weapons were missing from the armory. A shouting match ensues. Ranboo turns and walks back out the door. He walks down to the frozen beach and wades into the waters. Everything is hazy for a while. He remembers visiting the prison, the ruins of Las Nevadas, before being enveloped by the woods. Time passes differently in the woods. It's strange. Sometimes he's himself, sometimes he's other. The woman in the woods is very nice, though. She promised to help, but said that it was hard. Eventually he wakes up. He's back in the Snowchester Ocean. It doesn't burn, it just kind of tingles. He sees two figures walking on the beach, a short man with horns and a child with tusks. After a year, he is reunited with his family. I mean, I like Tubbo's more personally, so maybe we'll do Tubbo's. Tubbo awakes to movement beside him. Ranboo is getting ready for the day. He gives him a small smile and fades back to sleep. Later he gets up, brings food for Michael, goes to work at the inn, and comes home. Ranboo still hasn't come back. Tubbo puts Michael to bed. He signs for his other father. Tubbo explains that he's going to be the one to tuck him in tonight. After Tubbo walks around the empty mansion, After Tubbo walks around the empty mansion, they still hadn't quite finished moving in. He absentmindedly walks over to the armory and delights in the glow of checkmate hung on the wall. He looks over to its opposite to see the axe of Ender missing. He grabs his trusty sword and rushes to the door, but he pauses. He cannot leave Michael alone. He pulls a chair in front of the main door and sits, standing guard to defend his home and child. Hours later, he still hasn't left his post, but he hears footsteps outside. He cocks his crossbow. Ranboo enters. The relief Tubbo feels is quickly drowned out by rage. He screams at his husband for leaving to fight, for not telling him, for everything. Ranboo doesn't say a word, but turns and exits. Tubbo runs to their room. He grabs Ranboo's things. He shreds, burns, and destroys. Eventually the rage turns to tears, and Tubbo falls back into bed exhausted. Ranboo doesn't come back that night, or the next, or the night after that. Tubbo doesn't know what to say when Michael asks him about it. Days turn to weeks, turn to months. Tubbo does his best, but he's easily frustrated, and sometimes he finds himself shouting at his son for things out of his control. Every so often he eyes the liquor cabinet. Friends come to visit. They know how hard this has been for Tubbo. Jack takes the alcohol supply. He says it's for his tavern, but Tubbo knows the truth. Nobody wants another baby and left in a box. Foolish comes. He finishes the walls around Snowchester. For Michael's 4th birthday, they take him outside. Everyone is armed, refusing to let harm come to the child. Michael is more interested in chasing a bee. Trips outside become more frequent and less stressful. Almost 12 months after Ranboo's disappearance, Tubbo and Michael take nightly walks by the ocean. It's amazing how much they have grown. Michael's vocabulary is much larger and Tubbo's sign language is much better. The two communicate almost effortlessly now. One night they're walking and Michael stops to point at a figure in the distance. Rising out of the water is a tall black and white man with a crown on his head. Tubbo has to hold Michael back from running into the water to hug his father. But once Ranboo reaches dry ground, he can't resist anymore. Tubbo scoops Michael up and runs to his husband's arms. Anyway, I ascribe to the headcanon that Tubbo is GeorgeNotFound's son, and GeorgeNotFound abandoned Tubbo when he was young. And it is canon that Phil found Tubbo in a box. So, alcoholism can be genetic. So, yeah, but he doesn't. His friends help him, they save him. Yeah, no one wants another baby left in a box. I felt very proud when I wrote that one. Yep, that's reference to GeorgeNotFound. The good thing is Michael was young. He would have been 3 to 4 when Ranboo left. So when he grows older, he won't remember it. He won't remember that his dad left him. But it's still like poor Tubbo. But then they live happily ever after. And Ranboo isn't allergic to water anymore. He could swim and it was just fine. I had written, I think I deleted it, but I had written like a part about how like Tubbo like ran into his arms. Tubbo like ran into Ranboo's arms and like started like crying and didn't even notice that his Ranboo's skin wasn't burning like it usually does. Because that's another whole other headcanon that someone else did, that like Ranboo comforts Tubbo when he cries, but it burns Ranboo's skin, so Ranboo has a bunch of scars like down on his chest from like cuddling Tubbo, like comforting him when he's crying. Tommy? Let's do Tommy. Tommy isn't at the battle. In a way, he almost feels guilty for not being there. Maybe some of this death and destruction could have been prevented if he had. Puffy steers him away from this kind of thinking. It won't change what happened after all. He stays with Tubbo and Michael and Snowchester. They need the extra help now. Tubbo's a mess. Angry and sad and tired all of the time. Tommy isn't great with kids, but he's happy to help if it takes the load off his best friend's back. Tommy's feelings for Ranboo are complicated. In a sense, he's glad he's gone. He's always been jealous of him. But seeing Tubbo upset is almost as bad. After a while, he goes and visits Dream again. A fully supervised visit with the new warden. She thinks it might help him overcome some of his fears. And it does. He gets letters from Wilbur. He's not quite sure what to do with them. He doesn't read them, but he keeps them all. Maybe someday he'll be ready, but not yet. Nikki reintroduces him to Purple. They have a lot in common. Purple, Tommy, and Fundy hang out at Nikki's underground base occasionally. He goes to the wedding. It's weird, seeing everyone in the same place again. Not bad, but weird. It all goes well. Puffy and Nikki seem very happy together. They even babysit Michael sometimes. Things are better for Tommy. He doesn't have the life he wanted, or maybe he has the life he needed. Tommy's is one of the stories that I feel like kind of already like wrapped itself up pretty well. So like I didn't need to like add a lot of stuff for him. Puffy and yeah. I pulled it from canon. Puffy at one point gave Nikki a promise ring. And I love the trope of gay people just gay people taking in abandoned youths. And that's what they do. That's what Karl and George and Sapnap do for Hannah. That's what Puffy and Nikki do for others. And it's adorable. It's like one of my favorite tropes. Kristen has an ending. She's canon. I've made her a person. Kristen has an ending. Her ending will read last, because hers is the most important. She ties up a lot of loose ends. I didn't add any. I was very much considering adding Red Velvet, because I was kind of stumped on what to do for Antfrost's ending. So like, oh, maybe he meets a little cake person in the woods. But I didn't bother putting that, because it was just that Kirsten had been mentioned before in like a semi-lore. Phil was talking about how the woods had like gotten closer or something like that. So she's mildly involved in the lore. I don't know if Velvet has ever been mentioned in lore. I haven't seen a lot of Antfrost lore. I know the Red Banquet, and that's it. Because I know he's more active in it before I started to join the fan base. Let's do dreams. Before the escape, Puffy comes to visit him in prison. He hasn't seen his mother in so long. She tells him not to escape with Technoblade. Although she loves him, this is what is best for everyone. When the Syndicate arrives to break them out of the prison, he's unable to keep up. His muscles were weak from months of disuse. Dream stumbles, accidentally pressing a button on the wall. Sirens sound and the vault doors begin to seal. The Syndicate leaps through, but he hesitates and is trapped once again. He shouts for Technoblade to call in his favor, to reopen the door. He calls to the Syndicate, even invoking his code name, Hippocrates, but they don't hear. He waits in the prison for days. Soon he realizes they aren't coming back for him. Technoblade was the one they came to save. They didn't owe him a favor. Eventually, the vault reopens. Puffy is on the other side. She explains to him what has happened. The Battle of Las Nevadas, Quackity's death, Sam's breakdown. She's nominated herself to be the new warden while Sam recovers. No one's opposed. Puffy brightens up the prison, covering up the obsidian with books and paintings. It still is secure, but less like a punishment, more like a life. Sapnap and George come to visit often. Sometimes they bring their friend Karl. Karl doesn't remember Dream, but that's probably for the best. Ranboo even visited once, but no one's seen him since. After a while, Sam returns as a guard. Bad had left his position, so Puffy needed the help. He isn't Warden Sam anymore. He's more like the Sam Dream used to know. When he's on shift, he sits down and plays chess with them. Life in Pandora's box isn't perfect, but it's bearable. I mean, I feel like it's justified. He deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison. But, he doesn't deserve to be tortured every day. So, neutral. Papa Puffy. Yes, we can do Papa Puffy. She attends the funeral. They hadn't been close, but it felt important that she was there. Puffy begins to offer grief counseling alongside her general therapy practice. Not many come. Tommy comes in for his weekly counseling session. He's been doing well. A lot of times he just needs someone to talk to. Puffy says goodbye to Tommy and waves him out the door when she hears a large crash. She races to the back room of her office to find Sam. He was bleeding, having just crashed through her window. He seemed to be mumbling at someone that wasn't there. Her mind immediately goes to the prison. If Sam was here, was her son still there? But Sam required urgent help. Calmly and carefully, she convinces him to come and stay at her base. She places him in a lovely guest room and locks the door. Puffy heads to the prison, not quite sure what to expect. She finds the keycards strewn about outside and lets herself in. Dream was waiting on the other side of the vault door. He smiles when he sees her. She smiles back. She tells him that Sam isn't feeling well, and that she'll be taking over the prison for the time being. Dream is happy with this idea. She spends the next couple of months making the prison more comfortable and welcoming, and she coaches Sam back to a stable mental state. On her days off, she goes and visits Nikki, who has plenty of responsibilities of her own. Puffy has been teaching her the basics of psychotherapy. After all that's happened, the SMP could use some more therapists. One night, she has dinner at Nikki's underground city while Sam guards the prison. Purple tells her she should move in. There's plenty of room in Nikki's bed, after all. The two blush, but no one is opposed to the idea. They're both very busy, but they can always make time for each other. They get married in Kanoko Kingdom. The flowers serve as a beautiful backdrop. Everyone comes. It's a bit awkward. Not our relationships have fully mended, but it's peaceful. They have a good life together. Yes, Puffy gets a good ending. I couldn't give her a bad ending. She's just a mama bear. Yeah, she's just a sweetheart. She's never done anything wrong. Sure, she's killed people, but has she ever really done anything wrong? I don't think so. Maybe we'll do Sam first, because it's not that long. Nikki's is long. I think Nikki's is the longest that I wrote. Sam is at the prison when the syndicate comes. Nikki enters first, the least menacing of the group. Sam underestimates her. He lets his guard down. Nikki immediately incapacitates him and takes a cannon life. He responds in the prison, temporarily paralyzed by the neurotoxin on his sword as they let themselves in. Hi. He begins to hallucinate, seeing tall, shadowy figures with red eyes creeping towards them. The paralysis wears off as the syndicate returns with Technoblade. Sam stands, shaking, sweating. He looks at the group, wanting to fight. But then he looks around, seeing the shadowy figures surrounding them, whispering horrifying imagery and advancing upon him. The syndicate raises their weapons. Sam looks around frantically at the nightmare-inducing shapes that surround them. He drops the warden's will and runs. He spends a few days in the States, wandering around the SMP. Eventually, Puffy finds him and hospitalizes him. Puffy helps him overcome his paranoia, and takes over his position as warden. Once he has recovered, he takes a job working for Puffy at the prison. Warden Sam has been killed, and Awesamdude returns to the kind, compassionate friends he once was. He moves in with Ponk. He repairs his former relationships with the ex-Egg Pyre members, and seeks out the syndicate to make amends. He still sees the Shadow Men occasionally. Some are bloodthirsty, some are just quiet. But Puffy has taught him ways to stay calm, and he has learned to trust his companions when they say that no one's there. Yeah, Sam has a relatively good ending. Yeah, he goes through it a little bit, but you know, we'll do purples first, I guess, because it's before Fundies. He wakes at dawn. Something was wrong. He takes a deep breath and senses it. Smoke. He screams for Foolish and awakes Quackity and Fundy. He outfits his armor and races outside. The syndicate is there. Philza rushes him and Purple is slightly caught off guard. He gives it his all, but he does not have decades of experience like his opponent. It just takes one mistake. A failed dodge, and a sword finds its way between his ribs. He's back in his bed. He can feel the ache in his chest from his recent death. He grabs whatever weapons he can find and heads back out, ready for the next round. Fundy races out behind him, a prominent and bloody scar on the side of his neck. The battlefield has been split by a wall of lightning, the syndicate on one side and Foolish on the other. Foolish screams at them to run. Las Nevadas is not worth their lives. Purple hesitates, but Fundy pushes him towards the desert. Purple begins to run, but shouts for Fundy to go the other way. If they tried to follow, at least they'd have to split up. He runs, passing from one biome to another, but Purple's stamina fails him. He stumbles and falls, succumbing to unconsciousness. I realized like halfway through writing this, like how I was like intertwining them. I was like, oh my god, this video was really just D&D. And this is like exactly what I do whenever I start a new campaign. It's like I sit down, I have a paragraph for every character, and I'm like, everything that's happened to this character, everything that's happened to this character, everything that's happened to this character. And then I just sat down and I did this all with characters that already existed. Foolish is real sweet. I was very stumped on Foolish's ending. Like, I didn't want to give him a neutral one, but I could feel like it could go either way with Foolish. I felt like he could have a really good ending or a really bad ending. Like, I was playing with the idea, it doesn't happen, but I was playing with the idea that he's like a totem of undying, and he gives one of his lives for Eret at the Red Banquet. And I was feeling maybe he lost the other two, saving Purple and Fundy. And then he's like a true totem of undying. He's lost all of his 3 lives, saving someone else. I didn't do that. But that's what I was thinking about. What was I saying next? Fundy? Yes, Fundy. Okay. Purple shakes him awake. Panic is evident on his face. He hands Fundy a sword and proceeds to put on his own armor. Fundy readies his equipment and runs down to the pavement. The last thing he sees is an eye of Ender as the axe swings towards his neck. I meant to say neck. He's back in his bed. He sees Purple running out the door and follows. They advance to the front lines, ready to rejoin the fray when a wall of lightning blocks the way. Foolish is kneeling, a look of concentration on his face. He orders them to run. Purple hesitates, but Fundy can read the look on the god's face. This isn't a fight they were going to win. He forces Purple to move, and they run from the fight. Purple suggests they split up so they're harder to follow. So Fundy heads towards the woods alone. He runs for days until he physically cannot. He begins to hallucinate, Smelling baking bread and fresh cookies, he sees a figure with pink hair and a cape approach him, a person he had last seen on the battlefield. He wakes up in Nikki's underground city. After a brief coma, she had spent months nursing him back to health alongside Purple. After he wakes, they hold the funeral. Fundy shows Slime all the nooks and crannies of the expanding underground city. The blob settles down in an unused broom closet. He says smaller rooms can better hold his moisture. Once completely recovered, he spends some time traveling and eventually returns to the underground compound and settles down. After a while, Nikki gives him the letters that Wilbur had been sending her for him. It takes him some time, but eventually he reads them. Wilbur had stayed true to his honesty policy. He apologizes for everything. Being a shitty father, never giving him a chance to grow, always treating him like a child. Fundy doesn't write back, but he reads every letter. They come once a month. It's the most stable relationship he's ever had with his father. I don't know. It's an oof, but he does live his best life. He does live a good life. But his dad was kind of pretty shitty a lot of the time. Maybe once Fundy gets older, he'll start writing back. I feel like that would happen for a lot of them, like for Tommy and Fundy. Like Tommy, I wrote in his that he probably ends up reading the letters when he gets older. And then maybe he visits Wilbur or something, but like they all need some time away from Wilbur. They all need time to process their own issues before they can just... Fundy does not deserve to suffer. My little fox boy does not. Oh. No harm is allowed to come to him. If it does, that's not true. Fundy cannot be harmed canonically because it would hurt my feelings. Fundy. Okay, that leads us to Nikki, because we were doing that one was going in order. Phil calls for the syndicate, and Nikki arrives. He explains the plan. It seems easy enough. She's been training for something like this, and she's been trained by the best. The syndicate advances on the prison. Nikki enters first. Sam doesn't see her as a threat. That's his mistake. She takes her blade dipped in pufferfish poison and stabs him in the abdomen. The neurotoxins will alleviate the pain, but it will take his life slowly. The others enter. Philza grabs the key cards and lets them in. Nikki and Ranboo stand guard while Phil lowers the lava and sends over the bridge for Technoblade and Dream. They're on their way out when Dream stumbles and brushes up against the wall, setting off emergency security measures. The vault doors begin to shut. Reflexively, Nikki squeezes through. She does a head count. Everyone's made it but Dream. Nikki keeps going. He wasn't who they came to get anyways. At the entrance to the prison, Sam is waiting for them. The poison had acted quicker than she had planned. Sam seems distraught. He was trembling and sweating. Nikki prepares to best them once again, but he drops his sword and runs. The troops advance towards Las Nevadas. They catch the civilians by surprise. Nikki's target is the 23-foot-tall Titan with glowing green eyes. She gracefully dances around him, making precise, quick jabs to his ankles that bring him to his knees. Through her peripherals, she sees Purple and Fundy fall, followed soon by Quackity. All of a sudden, the air crackles with electricity, and a torrent of lightning is brought down, forcing her to step back from her foe. She shields her eyes until the thunder stops. She opens them to silence. On the ground is Quackity. A pool of blood surrounds him. Nikki looks to the heavens, offering a silent prayer, then turns and follows Techno and the rest of the syndicate away. Nikki takes the long way back, walking through the meadows officially owned by Kaneko Kingdom. It's there she sees a figure, bloody and camouflaged amongst the irises. She awakes the young man. He's immediately calmed by her presence, but then becomes agitated as he remembers the recent events. Nikki calms Purple and explains what had happened. She helps him to her base and puts him to bed. He sleeps for 3 days. But when he awakes, he awakes screaming. Nikki rushes to him. He asks for Fundy. Nikki is confused. Fundy isn't there. Purple keeps shouting for him, saying that they shouldn't have split up, that he's sorry. Nikki leaves Purple in care of Sapnap and George and heads out to look for Fundy. She finds the Foxman in the nearby woods, dehydrated and malnutritions. He takes the room next to Purple, but Purple has Sapnap put an extra bed in Fundy's room so he could stay with him. It takes a few months, but he recovers. Nikki has plenty to do to fill her time. She helps Purple move in. She trains with Phil and Techno, helps George and Sapnap with Karl. She picks up some hobbies, learning sign language from Callahan, reading Kanoko's library. Puffy teaches her about counseling. The SMP needs some more therapists. Every so often she gets letters from Wilbur. Sometimes she reads them. Sometimes she burns them before she can be tempted. She doesn't write back. She has nothing to say to him anymore. Kinoko Kingdom unofficially merges with Nikki's underground city. Puffy comes over more and more until Fundy and Purple convince her to move in. The routine is nice after so much chaos. Nikki is so sweet. Oh, we love her so much. We love her so much. And, okay, so so I'm going to read Callahan's next, but I want to talk a little bit more about Nikki's. I took a lot of inspiration for Nikki's, and for some of the other ones as well, from, like, the real-life content creator, from, like, actual Nikki. You know, like, because she's trained to be a therapist, so I'm like, oh, that'd be fucking dope if Canon Nikki, I've done Quackities, if Canon Nikki also becomes a therapist, you know, and Nikki did, like, really well in MCC with all of the fighting and stuff, and I'm like, that's freaking dope. If Nikki returned, like, if Nikki was ever in a battle in DreamSMP again, she would obviously do much better, so in the DreamSMP, how do you explain that? And it's like, oh, Phil and Techno, like, the best fighters in the server have been training her every single day, and so Nikki is fucking baller. Callahan's. I like Callahan's. Callahan never really socialized with a lot of the people on the server. He liked to keep to himself. He likes to visit Dream. They play games together. Dream tells him about a kid on the server who also doesn't speak. Something about his vocal cords being rotten flesh. Callahan heads to Snowchester and offers to teach Tubbo and Michael sign language. He loved seeing the joy on Michael's face when he finally found a way to communicate. Callahan grows fond of the kid and offers to become his teacher. Tubbo agrees. He needs some rest. Callahan, with the aid of Foolish, builds himself a lovely little cottage in Snowchester and lives there happily for the rest of his days. I don't know if Callahan actually knows sign language in real life, and I don't know if he actually is mute or not. I probably should have looked it up. I don't know if he's mute or just chooses not to speak online. But I think it's cute if the DreamSMP character, for whatever reason, because he doesn't speak, it knows sign language. He obviously has an alternative method of communication. And Michael is 3. He can't write yet, but he can definitely learn sign language. Alyssa is someone that I did exclude. So there's a couple characters that I left out. Alyssa was one of them. Alyssa is someone I excluded. Because I don't think, like, in reality, I don't think she's going to come back to the server at all. So, like, I could write her an ending. I have never seen Alyssa on the DreamSMP because I joined way too late. I joined the fandom way too late. But I don't think in reality that she's going to come back to the SMP at all. So I was like, I'm not going to write her an ending. Same with, like, Corpse or Lil Nas X or Vicstar or Laserbeam. Didn't write them endings. Because I don't think that they're going to join back before the SMP ends. Okay, Phil can do first, because the Egg Boys can all, like, go together. It's better if they're all read together. So we'll read Phil's first. Technoblade doesn't return from the visit with Dream. Phil reads the will he left behind and gathers the syndicate to perform a prison break. Nikki subdues Sam while Phil grabs the keycards. They successfully free Techno, but as they exit, Dream stumbles, accidentally activating the emergency measures. The exit begins to close. Phil dashes through, followed by Ranboo, Nikki, and Techno. But Dream remains trapped behind the vault doors. Hey. Phil gives Techno his backup supply of weapons and armor. They exit, ready to face Sam again, but Sam drops his weapon and runs away. They head towards Las Nevadas. Quackity would know Techno had escaped in a few hours, so time was of the essence. They descend onto the desert city, lighting it ablaze and setting off TNT. They face off against Purpled Slime, Fundy, Foolish, and Quackity. Phil is against Purpled. He looks at the young man's face. It reminds him of Wilbur. Purpled attacks, and Phil reflexively puts his sword between his ribs. The poor souls hadn't been ready for a fight. The syndicate focuses their ire on the 23-foot-tall Foolish as they wait for the others to respawn. Foolish conjures up a massive wall of lightning. The syndicate is temporarily blinded. When their eyes open, they see Foolish collapse onto his knees. He hears a crow's screech in his mind, and he looks up just as Quackity falls. Everyone goes silent. Then Techno bows his head and leads the syndicate through the ruins and back home. Phil returns to find a letter from Wilbur saying he was putting himself in exile. Phil goes to search the woods for him when a woman appears, the goddess of the woods. She tells him to give Wilbur space. He had put himself in isolation of his own volition. She had been watching Philza for a long time, slowly bringing her forest closer for a better look, but this is the first time she has appeared to him. Phil is in awe. He has never been one to consort with the gods before, but this goddess was different. They walked together every day. The forest grew into what was once a barren wasteland around Phil's home. Once a week he would receive a letter from Wilbur. He always replied. Okay, Ponk. After Sam's mental break, Ponk takes some time for himself. He spends a month alone in the woods, ruminating on everything. He knows his relationship with Sam hasn't always been perfect, but maybe it could be better. Once Sam is released, Ponk asks him if he'd like to move in together. They build a nice home, not too far from Bad and Skeppy's. Sam goes to work at the prison again while Ponk stays home and cooks. They take some couples counseling with Puffy. They learn how to be better. It's a quiet domestic life. But after all that's happened, maybe this is exactly the life he needed. Well, yeah, pretty simple. I didn't want... Okay. Boy, cactus. I didn't want to break up him and Awesamdude, but it was pretty freaking off. They're in a very toxic relationship. Sam ripped his arm off. So therapy. Therapy is the solution. They all go to therapy. Every single person on this server goes to therapy. Okay, yeah, BadBoyHalo and Skeppy and Antfrost are all, I'll read them all at once, pretty much, because they're all short. Antfrost. When the banquet went sideways, they ran. Bad and Skeppy went one way, Hannah another, and Antfrost yet another. He spent some time hiding out, unsure of when the mercenary's contract would expire. He stumbles upon Bad and Skeppy by chance. Antfrost was foraging for berries when he saw a blue figure sprint past, followed quickly by a black and red blur. Okay, Bads. It's all for Skeppy. It was all for Skeppy. The mantra repeats itself constantly in Bad's mind. On the eve of the Ren banquet, they ran. Hannah and Antfrost each split off, but Bad would not let Skeppy out of his sight. The egg has always had a much stronger effect on him. Some days he's himself, other days he's kicking and screaming and begging for Bad to bring him back to the egg. Distance seems to be the only cure for his madness. They move out to a quiet hillside meadow. Over time, they apologize to their former friends and family. Antfrost moves in beside them. Sapnap still won't talk to his father, but Puffy comes over for tea occasionally. They have each other, and that's all that Bad's been fighting for. And then Skeppy. Once the egg has been defeated, Bad drags him out of town and into the wilderness. The egg has much more influence over Skeppy than Bad. It takes much longer for the voice in his head to quiet down, and it never quite disappears. On warm summer days, he can hear it calling to him, telling him to return and hatch the god. It comes to him in dreams, nightmares, so he stops sleeping. Bad never lets him get far, though. Sometimes he's thankful for the gilded cage of his lover. Sometimes he's not. So that's kind of neutral ending. They have each other. They all have each other. They all find a lovely little house out in the country. But Skeppy's still infatuated with the egg to an extent. Bad was only ever following the egg to protect Skeppy. And then, other people took over the egg. He's like, yeah, this is just not... Bad definitely decided that his boyfriend was more important than his son. And that was shitty. But he did. And Sapnap and Bad don't talk anymore. I don't know if they ever will. If I were to keep writing this for years and years and years, I don't think I would ever repair the relationship with Sapnap and Bad. Sometimes relationships shouldn't be repaired. Sometimes you just gotta let them go. Bad invited his son to be sacrificed. That's what he did, and that was not cool. That was not fucking cool. He invited Sapnap to the Red Banquet where they were going to attempt to kill everyone. And I don't think... You could make the argument that maybe he was going to try to convince Sapnap to join the egg. I don't think that's where he was going. I think he was going to invite his son to be killed. Wilbur is definitely the worst fucking parent. Again, that's another relationship. Fundy doesn't read the letter. Fundy reads the letters. He never answers. He doesn't have any relationship with his father after it. But he doesn't, he still gets the letters every month. I mean, that's the nice Ghostbur. That's the best thing I could have given for the ending, is that he doesn't tell his father to stop writing them the letters because he still likes that connection. Ghostbur, then foolish. Ghostbur. Trains come and go. Sometimes he recognized the people on them, but not always. They didn't stop at his station, though, except for one. It felt like an eternity, but eventually one stopped. It was odd. Not a normal commuter train, but an old abandoned car with vines and flowers growing from every surface. There was a woman within, and by her side, a small blue sheep. I had to stick. I know that Wilbur said that Ghostbur isn't going to have any more lore, so I just gave him the tiniest little bit of silver lining. The tiniest little bit of silver lining is that Friend gets to die and go there with him. Because that's an unintended consequence that I don't think anyone realized, is that Friend is canonically immortal. Friend is immortal, and I've seen so many things of, like, Friend, like, every time Friend dies, he, like, goes on a train past Ghostbur. He does get Friend back. He never sees Quackity. I don't remember how close Quackity was with Ghostbur, but I feel like the train station is, like, pretty separate from the rest of the other plane. Or separate enough that, like, when you don't want to see other people in the afterlife, you don't see them. So, like, Ghostbur never interacts with any other dead people, like GeorgeNotFound or Mexican Dream and Quackity. Like, he doesn't see them. But yeah, I was gonna do Foolish next. Foolish smells the smoke a few seconds after Purple. He's the first to make it to the battlefield. He quickly grows to his full height and squares off against the Syndicate. Nikki faces off against him, moving with dexterity and making sharp, precise jabs at his ankles. The attacks force him to his knees. Even though they are hell-bent on destroying his home, he doesn't intend to kill. As Fundy and Purple fall around him, each losing a life, he focuses on the pain and holds off the Syndicate with a wall of lightning and refuses to let them back into battle, forcing them and Slime to evacuate. The effort of using his powers drains him, but he looks to the remaining Syndicate ready to keep going. Then he sees a small figure leap from the Space Needle and hurtle towards the ground. He hesitates, shocked by what he is seeing, and everyone is still as Quackity hits the ground, losing his last cannon life. They all stand in silence for a moment. Then Technoblade bows his head briefly and leads his troops away. Foolish stands alone in the remains of Las Nevadas, and he hears his mother's voice inside his head. His true mother's, not the kind sheep woman who had raised him. The goddess of the woods gives him a new title, no longer the god of undying or god of death, the role she had assigned to him as a young deity, but the god of creation, the architect of the DreamSMP, the role he had desired since he was old enough to want. He goes forth to build with his new creative powers, no longer hiding his builds in faraway places, but out in the open for people to see and revel in a god's power. The humans come and go. Some are born, some die. But Foolish's creations remain untouched forever. I liked the idea of giving Foolish, like, mechanically the creative mode. That's what I wanted for him. So that's the thing, is when the goddess of the woods anoints him to the god of creation, he, like, mechanically, he switches to creative mode. And then he goes around all the server. I mentioned in a couple of the other pieces, like, he builds in Kinoko Kingdom, he builds a wall around Snowchester to keep Michael safe so he could go outside. And he goes and he builds all of these things all over the server. Yeah, Foolish deserves everything. I love him so much. Like, I wish he did more lore. He does lore, but, like, I wish he did more. Yeah, Techno. Oof, we can power through the last couple of ones. We're very close to all of them. Dream writes in book after book about everything he knows while Techno waits patiently. He knows that he won't be there for much longer. As the days pass, he gets a bit more antsy. How long could it take Phil to read a letter? Techno helps Dream treat his wounds. Quackity hasn't visited since Techno arrived, but it was only a matter of time before he reattempted his long-awaited execution. Finally, the voices reported some good news. The Syndicate had assembled. They come at dawn. Soon the lava dropped and Techno helped Dream across. Phil hands Techno his gear and he suits up. They sprint back towards the entrance, but Dream, still weak from months of abuse, brushes up against the wall and triggers an alarm. On instinct, Techno dives through the vault doors before they close. He somersaults back to his feet. Everyone had made it through the doors except Dream. Technoblade turns to the exit. It seems Hippocrates will stay in the shadow for a while longer. They exit the prison and see Sam standing outside, his eyes wild with fear. Techno signals to his troops ready to give the command to kill. But Sam drops his sword and runs before it is issued. They advance towards Las Nevadas. They need to strike while the iron is hot. Before Sam could warn Quackity of what was to come, they descended to the desert town. The forces of Las Nevadas are ill-prepared. Technoblade faces off against Quackity. Big Q was never much of a swordsman. His weapon of choice was words, but they don't cut quite as deep. They parry for a while, but as Purple and Fundy fall around him, Quackity's falters. Technoblade takes advantage of his enemy's hesitation and brings his weapon straight down across Quackity's face, the near-perfect mirror of the wound he had received months before. Quackity collapses, a cannon life lost. A barrage of lightning is called from the skies, separating the two feuding factions. Once gone, the only person left fighting for Las Nevadas is foolish. Techno begins to advance, but the voices stop him. A rush of air, and then a form with wings tucked behind his back and two twin scars in his face lay motionless on the pavement. Techno gives a small nod to the fallen capitalist and leads his troops away. He returns to his base and life goes on. He develops new fighting techniques. He plays with his dogs. Once a week he goes and spars with Phil and Nikki. Dream remains in prison. He hasn't seen Ranboo in a while, but the Syndicate hasn't had the need to assemble again since the battle. Life is simple. Techno enjoys the quiet. I just need them all to chill the fuck out. That's how like every single one of these ends. It's just, like they all take a chill pill. GeorgeSchlatt. Quackity had promised to revive GeorgeSchlatt. They had made a plan before the battle. He was supposed to get a hold of Dream's revived book and bring him back. GeorgeSchlatt would have given anything to come back. But Quackity doesn't come. He waits. Something must have gone wrong. But there was nothing he could do. GeorgeSchlatt sits and waits for someone who will never come. I wanted him to have a bad ending. I wanted to give GeorgeSchlatt a bad ending. Didn't want him to have good. Didn't want him to have good. Didn't want. No. After what he did to Tubbo, and he left his son, and then he executed him, and then, No. Yeah, and it's even worse because Quackity dies. He could visit GeorgeSchlatt in the afterlife, but he doesn't. Quackity doesn't even visit GeorgeSchlatt once he's able to. He doesn't, and he sits and he rots. H-Bomb and Jack. Cool, H-Bomb and Jack. H-Bomb doesn't go to the funeral. He didn't really know the deceased. He felt that it could be rude. He does mourn in his own way. Death is sad, no matter who it happens to. Jack approaches him after, and he says he has a business opportunity H-Bomb might be interested in. Again, this is sort of like, H-Bomb's is a really kind of like a shitpost ending, because I feel like that's what H-Bomb would do. So Jack. The aftermath of the battle opened up some new opportunities for Jack. He ended up buying the bank once Sam was of right mind again. He finished the pub. He even hired H-Bomb as a maid for the Big Inn hotel. His new businesses kept him busy, but he tries to make time to see Tubbo. Things have been very hard on him recently. Jack empties the Snowchester mansion of all substances. Things would get so much worse if Tubbo tried to find comfort in a bottle. Jack visits Nikki a lot. The duo remains intact, and Jack serves as best man at her wedding. He's happy that she's happy. He spends some time traveling. He has residence in Snowchester, Kinoko Kingdom, and the main DreamSMP. He is the most prominent businessman on the server. It's not as fun as he thought it would be. After a few months, he retires and settles down in Nikki's underground city. It's peaceful, yet lively. He enjoys the life he has created for himself. Again, like Jack, yes, Jack. Jack's storyline, I feel like it's already pretty wrapped up. So it's just like, okay, just slap it up. Of course, he's gonna be the best man at Nikki's wedding, because the duo needs to remain, because I love their dynamic so much. He lives a peaceful and good life. Yeah, he owns the Big Inn hotel. He owns a tavern. He owns a lot of the stuff on the server. He like operates everything. H-Bomb's ending is a shit ending. Not a shit ending, but a shit post ending. He just, because all I know for H-Bomb, H-Bomb hasn't done much from what I've seen. Only thing I've seen is Maid Bomb. So Jack hires him to be a maid for the hotel. And probably I was gonna put, like, that he has, like, a personal maid service that he goes around being a maid. Yeah, you know, because I don't feel like H-Bomb's gonna give his character a serious ending anyways, so I can make it a little silly one. Michael first, because it's very short. We're gonna whack these out 4 in a row. Ready? Michael is lonely. The server is much quieter now. People have left and he isn't sure where they've gone. He doesn't quite know what to do with himself. One dark night he wanders through the empty server. He sees a figure in the distance. They wear a crown. Michael does not know a lot of other people in the SMP, so he doesn't know that everyone's pretty much moved to Kanoko Kingdom in the underground city. So, like, there's no one in the main DreamSMP, which is an unintended consequence. I just realized it once I sat down to write Michael's. Like, BBH and Skeppy and Antfrost all moved away, and Puffy's still down in her base, but, like, everyone else is out in the woods, more or less. Punz. Quackity's death shakes Punz. The pair hadn't been especially close, but death was always terrifying. They resolved to change their ways. No longer would they serve the highest bidder. Their days of mercenariage were over. They have no idea what to do last. The server has changed so much. One dark, rainy day after visiting Dream, Punz walks aimlessly through the SMP. They find themselves in front of Eret's castle. They enter. Eret is on the throne. Punz kneels and says that they are ready to rejoin the knighthood. Punz wants a purpose, a concrete ideal to believe in. Eret provides it. Punz is declared head of the royal guard. They guard the king and the royal consort. Over time, they recruit an apprentice. Although he's been around for a while, Connor is no expert of the sword. The king, the consort, and the guards go on many adventures. They fight witches and zombies. Once they even felled a dragon. Punz is happy with the life they've made for themselves. They found a family and the people around them. It's nice. Connor. Another one. Because he canonically has a family, and that was hilarious to me when I was writing this, that he canonically has a wife and kids. Connor doesn't know what to do with himself. After his brief gambling addiction, his wife left him. She took the kids. He thinks about calling her, telling her the casino burnt down and that he couldn't gamble anymore. But he doesn't. It's almost a relief. Connor wasn't the best husband or father. They'd probably be better off without him. He wanders for a while, taking in the ruined or abandoned builds of the server. They had a haunting beauty to them. He finds a massive castle. It seems like a nice place to settle down. He spends a few days there, but the owners return eventually. He grabs an ornamental sword to defend himself. The attackers stop and laugh at his terrible swordsmanship. He recognizes Punz, who had shown him kindness before. Punz offers to teach him how to properly hold his sword. Connor accepts. They spend their days dueling in the courtyard training, while Eret and Michael watch. Once Punz deems him ready, the four head out to cut down the evils of the world. We love the family dynamics of all of these. And Eret, wrapping up that little foursome. Eret only hears about the battles a few days after its end. They held the funeral for their former fiancé. The two had had their differences towards the end, but still, Eret had not wanted this to be the end. The main DreamSMP had become a ghost town. Most everyone had moved away, looking for a fresh start. One night, however, they see someone. The man introduced himself as Michael. He was new, he said. Eret and Michael began to spend much time together. First, it was because neither had anyone else, but then it was because neither wanted anyone else. Love can be found in the strangest places. A bit later, Punz returned, ready to become a full-fledged knight of Eret once more. Without hesitation, Eret grants it. Although few live in their kingdom anymore, Eret is still held in great esteem. He even officiates a few weddings. The kingdom becomes a place for lost souls needing a place to call home. Connor shows up after a few months. Punz volunteers to train him as a knight. The four travel together, ridding the land of beasts and keeping the server safe. Their adventures are legendary, their bond unbreakable. Whatever past they may or may not have had, they are the new knights of the SMP. I liked that one. Again, that's a part of the lore that I just never hear for, but I remember I was looking it up on the DreamSMP wiki, because I spent so much time on the DreamSMP wiki trying to figure out like who knew each other, to try to figure out like who would do what. Kristen time. This was like the last one I wrote, so my apologies if it's rough. I finished it this morning. Kristen. Kristen. In the beginning there was nothing. Then light and dark appeared, an angel and a devil, the creator and the destroyer. Arden went forth to create the oceans, the mountains, the deserts, but everywhere she went, Leontes ruined her work. She decides action must be taken. Using the strongest material she could conjure, she creates an ovid cage to trap the menace. Leontes is furious and swears to destroy anything she creates. Arden ignores him. Millenniums pass, and Arden begins to notice creatures roaming her lands, spawning straight from the earth. These small organisms amuse her, so she decides to create one of her own. She gives him golden skin and emerald eyes. She makes him into the guardian of humans, the dual god of undying and death. But Foolish was never content staying in the realm of the gods. How could he rule a people he had never lived amongst? And so she sends him down. It makes it more difficult to partially dole out death and life, but that was a compromise she was willing to make for his happiness. She begins to draw closer to the realm of humans in order to keep an eye on her son. But she also soon finds herself infatuated with the minuscule beings. She begins to offer them gifts, small ways to improve their short, fleeting lives. She makes them flowers and animals and her personal favorite, trees. She creates forest after forest all over the land until she eventually finds him. He was a special creature. Although he was as small as the rest, his soul was filled with greater compassion and kindness than Arden had ever seen before. She began to spend more time near him. She learns all she can about his life. Her greatest day was when she discovered his name, Philza. It was a bit odd, but she liked it. So she decided to give herself a new name as well, Kristen. As she learns about the troubles of the servant, she begins to do small things to remedy them. She hides a nuclear weapon. To her surprise, it did not de-escalate things. In her attempts to aid the humans, she rediscovers Leontes and his new followers. Her fascination with the humans had distracted her from her responsibilities. Leontes had managed to send his tendrils through the cracks of the cage and into the outside world. He had created the fake in-between to stop Karl, and he influenced the dreams of George and Fundy. Kristen quickly created notes for the poor souls, and she forged an access point from the fake in-between to the real in-between. She leaves a message for Karl in the entryway of the real in-between. She could merge all the other versions of Karl, erasing the branching timelines, but doing so would completely erase his memory. He makes the right choice. With Leontes' sequesters, Kristen finally finds the courage to talk to her favorite human. He asks about his son. She tells him truthfully that he entered isolation of his own accord. Kristen's forest moves closer until it completely envelops his home. They begin to spend more time together, walking and talking. One night, Phil asks her for a favor. It was a bit bizarre, but she sees no harm in it. The human and goddess were happy together. Occasionally, she had to leave to attend to her godly duties elsewhere. But even when Phil and Kristen were apart, their love remained. Kristen. 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 Yeah, Kristen. Mumza. We love Mumza. We love Mumza. We love Mumza here. Them. It's them. It's them. It's them. Also, I assume at some point Kristen would just make Philza immortal and they'd live and rule the earth together forever. Because I love them. Oh, I love them so much. And I very much did use Kristen as sort of a character to try to wrap up all the loose ends. Because I feel like a lot of loose ends in the DreamSMP aren't actually going to get tied up. Like, I don't think we're ever going to actually... I don't think the nuke has anything to do with anything anymore. I don't think that'll ever really be relevant again. So I just put Kristen took the nuke. Why not? Kristen took the nuke because she didn't think they should have it or something. She didn't take the other one. Don't know why, but she took the nuke. She's the one that was writing the notes to Karl and Fundy. I don't know if Fundy had any. Yeah, Fundy had notes. She was the one that writing them the notes, like the positive notes. And Leontes is the egg. That's the name of the egg. Is the bad guy, and she imprisons him. She imprisons Leontes in the egg. And her name is Arden. Her true name is Arden. Her godly name is Arden, because I like Shakespeare, because I'm a nerd. And the goddess of the forest, she's the goddess of the woods, and Arden is the woods in As You Like It. And in a lot of Shakespeare stories, especially As You Like It, people go to the woods to find themselves. and people rediscover themselves in the woods. And that was kind of a theme I wanted to do in all of the little endings of like people going to the woods and being better and like improving themselves. Because thank you. Cause Kristen makes people better. So the woods makes people better. Yes, I am a nerd. I'm aware of that. Shakespeare's so cool. Plus, also, like, we have all the Greek mythology thing that Techno's doing, so I feel like, oh, I can be smart too, Techno. Okay, I may not be an English major, but at least I'm still in university, so I can read classic literature. Yeah. So that's all of them. That's all of them. I mean, I also stream my own stuff. If you guys want to stick around and stay following me, and if you like my voice, you could listen to it more. I will talk about DreamSMP if you ask me about it. I will give you all of my opinions on all of it all the time. But yeah, thanks for watching and have a good day. Bye.